Hi guys, I'm David with MediaUnlock.net. In this video, we're going to be going over techniques, and we're going to be doing it on location for a high dynamic range series. This is part 3, of course. And one of the first things I want to talk about before we dive right into setting up our settings and taking these pictures is that with a high dynamic range photo, you want something that's very stationary, that's not going to be moving much. If you are going to take a picture of a person and do it in high dynamic range or HDR, then you're going to want to put them on a tripod or put the camera on the tripod and have the subject be as still as possible. That's why you see so much high dynamic range photos that are landscape, inside houses, pretty much anything that's not moving. And this is something I want to really harp on because we're taking 3 separate shots. Even though we're taking all 3 shots within 1 second, if there's too much movement, even the software cannot align the pictures. So that's the biggest thing, is we don't want a lot of movement in between each shot. We want every shot to be pretty much the same as the other shot behind it and the one before that. So let's talk a little bit about settings and getting ready to take a high dynamic range photo. Once you're on location, you figure out the shot that you want. Let's go on and set up some base settings. Let's get a base shot down and then do our finalized settings. And then we'll be ready to start taking high dynamic range photos. So the first thing you want to do, of course, turn on your camera. Go on and take the lens cap off here. And then I want to be able to get the shot that I want, and I want to go on and get my settings, my base settings set up and my base shot, so I have something to go off of when I start taking these pictures. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my settings, and I'm going to do an f-stop of 14, I'm guessing an ISO of 160, and a shutter of 125. Now you do want a higher shutter speed if you're doing the handheld method, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. If you're not doing the handheld method, you can have lower shutter speeds if you're working with the tripod. So I'm going to go on and take a shot. I'm going to take a look at my shot. I'm going to take a look at my histogram, see if I'm happy with it. I'm going to pop this up on the screen for you guys. And that looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with that shot. So now what I want to do, I've got my base shot. I've got the settings that I want for my very first picture. So when I do multiple exposures for my HDR, I've got the base shot that I want. So once I'm done with that, and we're doing the handheld method first, as you guys have probably figured out, is I want to go on and bracket. So I want to go into my menu, and I want to do, for this, I'm just going to do 2-stop bracket. Click OK. Got that set up. And I'm going to do burst shooting mode. So that means I'm going to hold down the shutter button, and it's going to take 3 shots for me. There's 3.5 shots per second with the 5D Mark II here. So the objective here is to keep your hand as steady as possible. I've got a shutter speed of 125, so the shutter is going to be pretty quick, and I'm doing burst mode. So this will allow me to take a high dynamic range photo, and the software that's out there this day, what little bit of movement there is in my hand, it will be able to realign that so I can still get a nice looking high dynamic range photo. So I'm going to go ahead and take my shot. 3 shots. I'm going to go back and look at it. Make sure everything looks good. Looks pretty nice. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take another shot. They look good, so I'm going to go on and take my second shot. Now, one thing I do sometimes in between when I'm doing my base shot and when I'm doing multiple HDR photos is I like to throw my hand or something in front of this shot to let me know that I've started taking HDR photos. And so it's easier to find the 3 photos, especially if I've got them back to back to back. It's easier to find them when I'm editing them up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another 3 shots. Try to keep your hand as steady as possible because you don't want a lot of movement in between each shot, which when you're shooting burst mode and you've got a shutter speed of 125 or higher, shouldn't be an issue if you're able to keep your hand pretty steady. And I took 3 more shots. Now, I didn't really like that shot. I didn't get enough of these rocks in the shot, so I'm going to retake the shot because I wasn't that satisfied with what I pulled off. That one's much better. I'm a lot happier with that. So now that I've done that, now what we're going to do, now that I've kind of explained our handheld method, again, burst mode, shutter speed of 125 or higher. Keep your hand as steady as possible. And again, check your histogram for that base shot to make sure you're happy with where your histogram's at and that your lighting or your exposures for your base shot is what you want. So now we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to throw it on a tripod here, and I'm going to use a shutter release. And this method is going to take longer to set up, but it will have better results in the end. Let me pop up a picture right now. This is a picture I took a few weeks back, and I was driving to work, and I just saw it. But I didn't really want to take a bunch of time on the way to work to take this shot. So what I did is I popped out, threw my lens on, took my base shot, got an idea of where I wanted my exposure, my initial exposure, and then set up burst mode, set up a shutter speed of 125 or higher, and just took 3 shots just holding the cameras as still as I could, because the cool thing is today's software and plugins will do really basic alignment. Now, if I'm taking a shot here and I'm moving over here and then I'm moving over here, yeah, it's not going to be able to line those up. But if it's very small movements in between each shot, and that's what burst mode and that shutter speed is for, is to get those shots as fast as possible, then you're not going to have a problem with aligning them in the editing software. All right, guys, so I'll be back after I've set up this tripod. So I've got the tripod set up how I want it, and I'm going to look through the viewfinder to really get the exact shot I want. And one thing I should mention, you know, high dynamic range photos and shooting them with people in them is kind of a difficult thing to do. So if you need to take a picture of a person and use that high dynamic range photo or HDR photo, your best bet is to use a shutter release and a really sturdy tripod, and then to make sure that that person, whatever you're shooting, to make sure that that person moves as little as they possibly can. So if you're just kind of, maybe let's just say you're going to do a portrait shot, you want to tell them, be as still as possible. Give them a 1, 2, 3 still, and then burst mode, take as many shots as you can. So pretty much is the handheld method on a tripod. You're using that burst mode, you're using a higher shutter speed, and what you're doing to keep the shot on the camera side steady is the tripod and the shutter release, and you're just hoping that the individual can actually keep still enough so that the alignment can be made in the editing software. And I will show you guys how to do that in the editing software. So let's go on and snap a couple shots. First thing I want to do is I want to go on and figure out what shot I want. So I'm going to look through my viewfinder, or look through my eye hole here, and I'm going to see, get it set up. Now, clouds are a lot of fun to work with. I don't have a lot of clouds today. We do have a lot of green, so I'll be able to pop up the vibrance in the shot, and we'll make the shot look really nice. That's one thing that you're looking is color, of course, because high dynamic range photos are very colorful. They make things pop. So very bland colors, they work fine, but when you have very vibrant colors to work with, it's really going to work a lot better with your high dynamic range photo. So I'm looking through, figuring out what shot I want to get. I want to pull these clouds in, but I'm going to probably set it to where it's right above this cloud. So I'm going to go on and lock in my position here. I've already got the shot. Now I need to go on and do a focus. I'm going to go on and focus. I'm focused where I want. Now what I do is once I've focused, I go on and turn off the autofocus and put it in manual. Once I've got the focus where I want it, make sure everything's good. And we're still in burst mode, and just hold down the shutter, get your 3 shots. Got my 3 shots. Let's take a look at them, see how I like them. Yeah, it's pretty nice. So I'm going to take another one. I'm going to change up my position. I'm going to see if I can get a different angle. Might as well, I'm here, so let's get a couple different angles to work with, because I may not like this angle. I may like the next angle better for when I edit it. So we're going to readjust. All right, see how that looks. Oh, it moved a little bit. And let's go on and do a zoom. So I'm going to go to 35 millimeters. I've been shooting at 19. Wide angle looks really good with high dynamic range photos. In my opinion, I'm really into wide angle shots. Okay. Bring that cloud in. Put it up in the upper corner. Lock in my position. Make sure it's good where I want everything. Perfect. Now what I want to do is put my autofocus back on. Let's go on and focus where I want the shot to focus in on. Got my focus where I want it. Manual focus. Shutter release, 3 shots. My 3 shots. And there you have it. That's how you take a high dynamic range photo. So now, let's head back to the computer. Let's do a little bit of editing and show you guys how to do a quick edit.